Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, fountain pen focus. The pen I'm choosing to focus on is this. This is the Leonardo Momento Magico. The colour of this is called meal or honey. When I first got this, I was a little bit dubious, to be honest, about the colour. But I found orange inks go so well with this. And it is a pen that I actually quite enjoy using. So join me now down on the mat. We'll take a look through the pen. We'll do some size comparisons, weights and measures, a writing sample. Then I'll give you my thoughts and some scores for this pen. Here we are down on the mat with the Leonardo Momento Magico. Just turn this around for you. Just look at this gorgeous meal material. So meal, Italian for honey. I love the way this looks. I mean, I've got yellows that I can see. I've got oranges, brown. Then we've got this gorgeous, can you see them? That bright light coming through. Very, very pretty. Let's start by taking a walk through the body. So starting with the cap, the end, we've got a point. Very quickly comes down to the main part of the cap. To my eye, it's tapering out till it gets to about maybe 3/4 of the way down. Then we go straight and down to the ring. We'll look at the ring in a second. The clip, very, very, very bouncy, very thin. As you can no doubt tell here, I've already managed to bend it, and I hardly use this. It only really goes over the loops in my pen cases, but it's bent already. Very springy there. We have a wheel at the bottom. That spins around quite nicely. We're coming on down. We come to the band. Here's the band. Nice decorative. You can still see some of that resin going through it. A little bit more resin, and then it starts to taper down until we hit the body. And when we hit the body, we can see a little tiny bit of the ink window. The body, same width until virtually the end, so right the way down to maybe 3/4 of the way. Then we've got a little bit of a tapering. We've got a ring. Then we have this blind cap. The blind cap again has got that point on, very similar to what we see on the cap. Obviously not going to trigger it because there's ink in here. Let's take the cap off. So there's half, one, just over one turn, maybe about 1 1/4. The first thing we see is the good sizable ink window. One of the things I like about this pen, I can see the ink is very clear there. You know, I've got an orange ink in here, but you can see that flowing around. If we then take the cap off a bit more, we've got the section. So this isn't the same style section as I have on my Leonardo Momento Zero Grande, which is more of the section where it goes down and then it's flat. Here, we're coming in, but then we're tapering out. I do prefer the section on the Momento Zero Grande. And that reveals this nib. Taking a closer look at the nib, it's fairly plain, fairly simple. So it's a gold colour. We've got a border around it. Underneath the breather hole, we've got a pair of wings, the Leonardo logo. We've then got the word Leonardo, then Italy. On the side there, we can see the size of the nib. Nice, simple steel nib, writes really well, which we'll see in a second. Just going to swap over now, and I'm going to fetch in some size comparisons. My first two size comparisons, Pilot Metropolitan, Lamy Safari. With the cap on, that Leonardo, longer than both of them, and also slightly wider than both of them. Let's take the caps off and look at them unposted. Unposted and lined up by the tip of the nib, the Leonardo ever so slightly longer than the Safari, but definitely longer than the Pilot. If I line them up by the top of the section, now the Leonardo shorter than the Safari. If I look at this pen in the hand, unposted, it's very, very nice. Just going to post this. Posts very well, nice and secure. Doesn't feel too back heavy. The cap is light, we'll see that when we look at the weights. I do prefer though to use this unposted, but that's just a personal preference. If you like to post your pens, you can. Talking about being posted, let's take a look at them posted. With the pens posted, again lined up by the tip of the nib, just slightly move that there. There we go. The Leonardo still edging out the Safari, but certainly a lot longer than what we see with that Metropolitan. Let's swap over and we'll look at some pens that are in roughly the same price range. The pens I brought in, Etibaldi Bernonia, 255 Aussie dollars when I bought it. The Leonardo Momento Magico, that was 260 Aussie dollars when I bought it. And the Diplomat Aero, that was 263 Aussie dollars when I bought it. So all three of them roughly the same price. In terms of length, we've definitely got a difference here between the Diplomat, but the Tibaldi Bernonia, also an Italian pen, and the Leonardo, roughly the same length. Let's take a look at these unposted. Unposted, as I've already said, that's how I tend to use my pens. All three of them roughly the same length. We do see a difference in the sections though. On the Diplomat Aero, we've got this metallic one with a bit of a grain on there. We've got this new section shape on the Leonardo. Then on the Tibaldi, we've got a smaller section and it doesn't seem to have as, I want to say, deep an hourglass type shape as what we see on the Leonardo. I've got to be honest, of the two, I do find the Tibaldi to be more comfortable to write with. Let's pop the caps on. With the caps on, the Tibaldi, that's now in the lead in terms of length. We've got a definite here, haven't we? Large, medium, small. One other difference between the pens, the Leonardo is a piston filler, whereas the other two, the Diplomat Aero and Tibaldi Bernonia, they're both cartridge converters. Let's swap over and fetch in the rule of measuring. Here we've got the rule of measuring. Let's fetch in the pen. So try and get this lined up so the point there is on the 0. So with the cap on, 14.5 centimetres. Unposted, 13.1 centimetres. Posted, 16.9 centimetres. The width of the body at its widest part, so that's about here, that's 1.31 centimetres. The width of the cap, again at its widest point, 1.57 centimetres. The section goes from 1.12 up to 1.2 centimetres. The section, as I said, it's a nice width. I just don't find it comfortable. I find this lip, my finger digs into it. Let's move this out of the way and fetch in the scales of weighing. Here we've got the scales of weighing. Let's fetch in the pen. So the whole pen, 25 grams. That has got ink, about half full of ink. The body, 17 grams. The cap, 8 grams. So not an overly heavy pen, but certainly not the lightest pen I've got. Let's swap over and fetch in the notebook of testing. Here we've got the notebook of testing. This is Ayush paper. It's made in India. It's 100 GSM paper. It's like a creamy colour. And one of the things I do notice with this, it's got a bit of tooth to it. You can feel the texture as you're writing. I like this. It's a nice paper. It's not overly absorbent. I find it works really well with fountain pens. So let's do some writing. So we've got a Leonardo, Momento Magico. This is where I'm glad this is an A4 pad because it seems a fairly long name. We have a broad nib on here, and as I've already said, when I bought it, it was 260 Aussie dollars. The ink is by Diamine, and it's Blaze Orange. I really like this ink in this pen. I think it's such a good match. Just look at that. I've tried some other orange inks in here. I've even tried some brown inks in it. But when I tried this combo, to be honest, I just fell in love with it. And this is what I know only fill this pen with. Or at least until this bottle's empty. Drying times. So we go immediate. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. 1 minute. Yeah, after a minute, teeniest a bit of a smudge there. Summer's now over here in Australia. I have had some issues over the summer with, well, all my papers because of the heat. The papers seem to dry out, so ink dries a lot quicker. I think we're back to some more normal drying times now. Let's move the mic and write a sentence. I do like the way that this pen writes. You know, with this ink, as I said, I think it's perfect. You know, we're certainly seeing some shading here. But one of the things I do notice with this ink is as it dries, it goes darker. So at the moment, we're looking fairly light. Let's see what it's like though once I finish doing all the writing. Line variation, so there's no pressure. Here's with some pressure. I tend to use my pens with very little pressure, but it does look like it's slightly wider, mainly though I think because there's more ink being put down. So there's no pressure, there's with. None, with, none, with. Steel nib, not expecting any flex. Flow test. Makes it all the way across, and as I'm doing this I do try and rotate the nib just a teeniest bit. So what are my thoughts and my scores for the Leonardo Momento Magico and Diamine Blaze Orange? Let's start with pen looks. I love this material, I love the looks of it. I will be honest, when I first got this I was thinking, oh God, and Bennett, it looks like vomit. But as I've used it, I've really come to like this. I think it's really pretty, you know, especially the way that the light plays over it. The clip, to be honest, it seems very small for the pen. I mean, look at that. I mean, how flimsy it is. I would have liked that to have been a little thicker. So, you know, as you can see, as I've already said, I've bent it already. I've bent it a couple of times. But pen looks, I just think it's very, very pretty. I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. Build quality. Well, the clip, that's what lets it down. Everything else seems to be really good. It's solid. I've got no issues there with the threads. They go on and off easily. Not going to work the mechanism. That works perfectly fine. One thing I do find with this pen, because the section is a bit wider, I need to unscrew the nib unit and then fill it using a syringe. Just doesn't fit into most of my Diamine bottles. But minor thing, and it's easy enough to do. Build quality, 8 out of 10. Writing experience. Well, we've seen it on here. Hopefully you can see now with my sentence, now it's had time to dry, that the ink has gone darker. Still seeing some nice shading though. It's really nice when you see it. Just going to fetch in 52 GSM Tomoe River notebook, A5 notebook. So there we go, Leonardo Momento Magico, Diamine Blaze Orange. This is about the third fill that I've put in here. You can see I actually did this writing sample right back in October. You know, I'm calling out a lot of what I've said. It's grown on me. The nib is smooth, a little bit of feedback. Hopefully you could hear that when I was writing. Remember, there is some texture to this paper. Now, one thing I do call out, we haven't really seen it today, but I do occasionally see some railroad. To show that this is just a roadie notebook, this is actually where I see a lot of the railroading happening on. And you can see here on the down stroke for H for thing, you can see that bit of railroading there. And I have noticed that happens quite a bit. I say mainly on this Rhodia notebook, but I do find a lot of my pens, they struggle on Rhodia paper, so I'm not overly worried about that. Again on here we can see gorgeous shading. Even on here you can see there, a bit of railroading. Not that much. Altogether it's a really nice writing experience. For writing experience, 8 out of 10. Ink flow, no issues as we've seen. Makes it all the way across the page quite nicely. I've pointed out that the ink dries a slightly different colour than it goes down on the page. It's not a bad thing. I actually quite like it. I think it's quite enjoyable sometimes. I know it's going to sound really sad, but just to watch that ink drying and changing colours is quite interesting. Ink flow, 8 out of 10. Comfort, it feels nice in the hand. As I say, I tend to use it unposted. This does dig into my finger a little bit. I'm being very picky there about that. It's not enough to stop me from writing multiple pages. It's just something I'm aware of. Really nice width. The weight, because it's not overly heavy, it just feels to disappear into my hand when I'm writing. Comfort, 9 out of 10. Value for money, $260 is a lot of money for a pen. I know there's some really expensive ones out there, but for me, $260, a lot of money. It's not something I'd certainly be spending every day buying pens of that price. I can see why it's worth it though. Yes, it's a steel nib. I'd have liked to have had a gold nib. I can buy a gold nibbed Pilot E95S for about $200. I can buy a Pilot Custom Heritage 92 for about $280, about the same, or just over this price. So, yeah, would have liked a gold nib. Let's be realistic though, not going to get one. I like the material. I love the ink window. I think that's really good. It writes nicely. Don't see any problems with it. I think for value for money, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So that means the total score for this pen, the Leonardo Momento Magico with Diamine Blaze Orange, that comes out at 8.33 out of 10. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Have you got a Leonardo Momento Magico? Have you got any other Leonardo pens? I've got to be honest, I do quite enjoy the Leonardo pens I do have. Please drop any comments down below. Let's kickstart a conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.